So I ended up making a pretty tough decision in late 2021. I decided to get rid of all of my Canon EF glass, including all of my L series lenses. Now I still owned EF lenses from other companies, but more importantly, I wanted a lighter set to travel with, and I also liked the idea of something that was built natively and designed for my RF camera system. So I decided to purchase 4 lenses for my Canon RF lens starter set: the 16mm 2.8, the 35mm 1.8 macro, the 50mm 1.8, and the 85mm f2 macro. Now I also already happen to own the Canon RF 24-105 f4 L series lens, which I'm actually filming this with right now and which you probably saw used on the master shot for these lenses. Now I purchased each of these lenses individually for specific reasons. The 16mm, which was $300 at the time of purchase, is great for vlogging, for architecture, and for landscape photography. And it's one of the few ultra wide lenses that are RF native mount that will still remain wide on your 4K crop, whether you have an EOS R or EOS RP. What I also love about the 16mm is the portability of it and the size and the footprint that it's going to have on your camera. And the 35mm, which you can find typically between $400 to $500, is to me probably the best all-around RF lens. It is great on a full frame camera or on a crop sensor camera. It's great for photography, it's great for filmmaking, it's great for street photography. And what I really love is the macro capability and the short focus distance on this 35mm lens. Now the fan favorite Nifty 50, which usually goes for right around $200, is probably the best lens to start out with for anybody that is a non-kit lens. It's great on full frame, and for me personally, if I could only take one lens out in the real world for B-roll and for photography, it would probably be this lens. And the 50mm focal length is probably the focal length that I've used most for photography in my personal day-to-day life. And just as I said with the 16mm, the same goes for the 50mm. The size and the footprint that it's going to have on your camera is great for just being inconspicuous when you're out in the streets, whether you're filming or you're doing photography. And then of course there's the 85mm, which typically goes for around $600, give or take $100 depending on your time of purchase. It is the go-to focal length for portrait photography, and for this specific lens I love the fact that it has a macro capability and it gives you a lot of unique shots. And for me, it is actually now my new favorite lens to use for talking head shots. And most of these videos that you've seen as of late, I've used my 85mm f2 on this camera, and even with this 24-105, I'm using it at the 85mm focal length, just because I like the compression and the separation from the background and the framing with this lens or this specific focal length. Now, just as any item is going to have its unique benefits, they're also going to possess their drawbacks as well. For me, for the 16mm, my 2 biggest issues are going to be the build quality and then the lack of a dedicated focus ring. For the 16mm, there is one ring and then there is a switch that will go back and forth between dedicating that ring to either the control ring or being a focus ring. And then you will have to actually access the menu on your camera to switch between manual focus and autofocus. I have also seen in some reports and reviews that there is some bowing and lack of sharpness on the edges with this lens. I have not dealt with that as much personally, though the ultra wide angle will be a little more pronounced in your film and your photography with this lens, but to me it does not seem to be over exaggerated. And then for the 35mm, I don't really have any personal gripes with this lens. Of course the build quality could be better, but for $400 to $500 all around, I really don't have anything negative to say about this lens. And then as far as the 50mm goes, my gripes would be the exact same as the 16mm. That would be the build quality and then the lack of a dedicated focus ring. Now, as much as I love and use this 85mm for my talking headshots and for B-roll shots, there's one thing that everybody can agree on, and that is the autofocus is super slow on this lens. It will take a long time to hunt and to find focus between greater distances, and that will only be accentuated more when you are in your macro focal lengths. While there are a few RF mount alternative lenses out there from other companies, even with the few quirks that they possess, I really actually do like these RF mount lenses from Canon. And if you can time it right, you can usually find the 35mm and the 85mm for $100 off directly from Canon or from retailers. Either way, at this price point, if you are looking to ditch your adapters or you just want to upgrade to a native RF mount set for your camera, it's hard to beat these at this price point, especially considering the fact that you could probably purchase this whole set for the same price or cheaper than most of Canon's new RF mount L lenses, 24-105 aside. And like I said, we will talk about that in a separate video. If you guys have any thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one.